Thank you for that beautiful introduction. Hello, everyone. Good morning. How are we doing today? Are we good? Are we feeling all right? All right, so we're on the third and final day of the Baobab Summit 2019. We've made it. So I don't know about you guys, but I've had such a joy and pleasure being here. It's been so exciting. I've had such an honor and privilege of having the chance to interact with you all. I know that I'm going to go back to my home base in Nigeria, still tingling with excitement from all the interactions that I've made here, all the beautiful memories, very beautiful memories that I've made here. So you guys should be proud of yourselves. Thank you so much for making this such a special event to remember. So now it's time for a panel, but before I start the panel and calling the panelists forward, I just want to give credit where credit is due. I was always raised, my parents always said, Chika, make sure you give credit where credit is due. So I want to do that very briefly, if you guys don't mind. So can we just, first of all, show some appreciation for Norman and Rosine. You guys have done such a beautiful job. Shake it off, shake it off. You guys have done such a great job in guiding this program, so kudos, well done. Also to our speakers, let's just give them a round of applause as well. All the speakers who have graced this stage and has blessed us with their wisdom and their wise words, we really want to thank you so much. The same for all of those who facilitated the workshop. Can we also clap for them as well? All the breakout sessions that have been happening throughout the course of this summit. And then, of course, MasterCard Foundation. Of course, we have to show them some love. Also, the staff, all the teams, all the people who have helped the MasterCard Foundation to bring this event together. Last but not least, the scholars, you all. You guys are the reason why we're here. We're here to celebrate you all. If it weren't for you, we won't be here, right? So just give yourselves a hand of applause. If I can just say, it's been such a joy seeing young people. It's so great to be around brilliant people who have dreams and goals. It's been very inspiring for me myself. And if I can just say, I encourage you all, young people, keep moving forward, all right? Just keep moving forward. You guys are already on the wheel. You're doing beautiful work. I'm sure your families, your communities are so proud of you. So just keep going, all right? Don't stop. You have great destinies. I'm so excited to see where you guys are going to end up in the next 5 years, the next 25 years. It's going to be an amazing place, and I'm going to be cheering you guys on. Also, if I can just say, never forget that you all have communities. You have communities of people who are rooting for you, people who are cherishing you, people who want nothing but the very best for you. So never, ever forget that, all right? Just promise me, as you continue on this journey with life, never forget that you have communities of people. Because sometimes, as we go throughout this journey of life, sometimes it may feel kind of lonely as we're climbing up the ladder of success, climbing up that mountain to attain each of our goals, hitting those milestones. As you go up and up and up, higher and higher, sometimes it may seem like there's no one to talk to, that there's no one to confide in. I'm speaking from experience. As you go up, it may seem very lonely. Who can I talk to? Who can I reach out to? But you guys have community. You have people who are willing to give you guys a hug if you just ask for it. You have people who are willing to give you words of encouragement, so never, ever forget that. Promise me you'll never forget that you have community. Does that sound all right? All right, so now for the matter at hand. I'm going to call on 3 brilliant people. I'm so excited for the chance to moderate this conversation. So I'm going to call their names, 3 people. They're going to join me here on this stage. Once they're seated, I'll talk about the topic of conversation. Does that sound good? All right, so let's start with Ms. Patricie Uwase. Just come forward and give her a round of applause as she comes forward. Patricie joins us from Rwanda's Ministry of Infrastructure. She's an engineer by training. So She's not a small girl, as we say in Nigeria. She's not a small girl. Patricia has been part of some of Rwanda's biggest projects. For example, this very venue where we find ourselves, the Kigali Convention Center, she was part of the planning to make this massive, beautiful building come to fruition. And also, Patricia is part of the planning for the Bugesera International Airport, which is about 45 minutes away from here, right? It's not yet open. Do you guys have an opening date for that? Not yet. You're building it. Okay. You're building it. So well done. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I'm going to call on Jean Bosco Nzeyimana. Jean Bosco Nzeyimana. Jean Bosco and his team have been creating some really cool innovations to help with waste management. Now, waste management is a sector that we kind of neglect sometimes. We tend to overlook it. But I'm telling you, if you don't have a proper waste management system in your city or in your home, then you're in big trouble. So, Jean Bosco, thank you so much for your work in helping to make waste management in this country more efficient and more sustainable. Thank you. And finally, I'm going to call on Joseph Munyambanza. Joseph, come and join us. Joseph lived the life of a refugee in Uganda, okay? So we can all imagine that the refugee's life is very difficult. You know, obstacles along the way, everywhere you turn, there's hardship that you have to overcome. But Joseph, he didn't just sit down and wallow in pity like he could have done, like many people tend to do. But Joseph and his friends, they came together, they put one or two things together, and they created an organization to help fellow refugees. Beautiful work. So refugees helping other refugees. And today, the name of Joseph's organization is being spoken and recognized around the world. So Joseph is not a small boy, as we say in Nigeria. Don't mind his petite stature. He's not a small boy. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to hear what you all have to say. So before we get started, I just want to inform you guys that this session right now is going out live on Facebook. So if you go to Facebook right now and check out MasterCard Foundation's page, you'll see this video. So you can go ahead and share the URL with your social media contacts. Cool? All right. So we are here to talk about your journeys, especially your journeys post-graduation. We want to know how success and courage played a role in your journeys. So let's first start with your story. What is Jean Bosco's story? What is Patricie's story? What is Joseph's story? I've just given a very brief bio, but now we want to go beyond the bio and learn a bit more about you. Let's start with Jean Bosco. What is your story? Can you give us some highlights about where you've been, where you are right now, and where you see yourself going?
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for having me here. It's very difficult to talk about myself, especially after you've introduced these, very amazing people.
Yeah.
And yourself as well. But I'm going to try and step in your shoes.
You're already there.
Okay. Like you said, my name is Bosco. It's Jean Bosco Nzeyimana, but I go by Bosco. I'm the founder of Habona Limited, which is a company that collects organic waste and make briquettes and pellets, which act as a sustainable replacement to wood and charcoal that people use, the story. In developing countries, we rely on charcoal and wood for our daily cooking needs. So Habona makes these pellets and briquettes to act as an alternative fuel source. Apart from that, I also co-founded an ecotourism company. So we have a place where people can come and camp or stay in replicas of traditional Rwandan King's Palace or Queen's Palace. We also offer nature tours where we help tourists to experience what nature or the environment has to offer. So that's Jean Bosco in brief. But apart from that, I'm a graduate. I just graduated 3 years ago from the University of Rwanda. What else?
What did you study?
That's it. Yeah, I did business administration. It's strange because what I do is totally different from what I studied, but that's my educational background.
And where do you see yourself going? That's also part of the story.
Yeah, apart from that past, I see myself as someone who is really focused on growing these companies. I want to see these companies growing not only in terms of revenue, but also in terms of like reaching, a broad geography, reaching so many people. Because we already know that the issue we are trying to tackle is very huge. So we want to make sure that we reach many people in terms of giving them access to the products that we're already making. And also, what else? Yeah.
Good, thank you so much.
That's the main thing that
That's your story in a nutshell. All right, Patricie, what is your story? Tell us some highlights. Where you've been, where you are now, and where you see yourself going.
Thank you, Chika. Thank you, everyone. It's such an honor to be here today. I love the MasterCard Foundation because it has definitely made an impact in my own life. And my story is intertwined with the story of the MasterCard. My name is Patricie Uwase. I grew up in Gisenyi, just northwest of here. I was born in Goma. My family had been there as refugees for 3 decades and moved back to Rwanda right after the Rwandan genocide against the Tutsi. I'm currently a public servant. As you saw, I'm in the Rwandan government. I work for the Ministry of Infrastructure as the permanent secretary. And I've been in the job for about now 10 months, so very new for me. Before that, I was working as a technical advisor to the Rwandan Minister of Infrastructure in the same ministry, right after I moved back from Berkeley. So I graduated from Berkeley in 2015, feels like forever now, 4 years. And I studied civil engineering, transportation engineering. And I guess I would say my story and the Berkeley experience all stems from my childhood. In Gisenyi, growing up, we didn't have proper roads at the time, and I always had chats with my friends, my childhood friends, that I wanted to build roads. So it started from there, and here I am. I'm trying to build roads for Rwanda and contributing to what we're trying to do here. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And then Joseph?
Hello. You guys are going to excuse me. My voice has turned different, but I'll do my best to speak. Good morning. I'm Joseph Munyambanza, originally from the Democratic Republic of Congo. But since I was 6 years old, my family was forced to live in Uganda. And it's where I did my primary education and my first 4 years of secondary school before I went to the African Leadership Academy. In 2008, I was in the inaugural class. And now that I'm going to talk about the work I've done with my friends, Koburas. So growing up in the refugee camp, there were many problems. But there were 2 key issues which really threatened people's lives, and part of it was connected to sickness, diseases, where people get sick and they don't have access to treatment, and mostly mothers and young children. But another big problem was the problem of lack of access to education. And I still remember going to primary school, like walking 3 miles to school, 3 miles back home, and most of the time no lunch, no dinner, and wondering what the future would look like. I really worked hard in school, and I was very lucky to get a scholarship to go to secondary school. But most of the time in the refugee camps, schools are overcrowded because you find like you have like 1 or 2 primary schools in a community which has thousands of people. And most African communities are dominated by children. So the community I was in, you find that about 75% young people are supposed to go to school. And in class, most of the time, especially in early primary school, we would sit when we were like 150 children with 1 teacher, and most teachers actually did not know how to use the Ugandan curriculum. But along the way, when I was in secondary school, my friends brought the idea of us coming together, trying to see how we can help one another. And because I had really done very well in the national examination to finish primary school, I felt that I had something to contribute. And so most of the time, I led the academics part of it. I did tutoring for children. Most of the holidays, I spent them helping other children so that they can pass primary school. And we continue to grow the organization. By the time I went to African Leadership Academy, we had even helped close to 100 children to go to secondary school. So we opened up students' homes away from the refugee camp. The refugee camp had primary schools, but we did not have complete secondary school. So for us to be able to help children to do secondary school, we had to cross 90 kilometers away from the refugee camp. And so what we did as young people, we went and rented 2 rooms and put 16 children in 2 rooms, girls in one and then boys in another one. But that is the starting we had. Today we have supported thousands of students. We have a number of primary schools we are running. We have a number of hundreds of students we are supporting in secondary school. And we are lucky to be supported by MasterCard to partner, and some of the students who completed our secondary school program, they have been going to to university. And so I was one of the first MasterCard scholar, but 1 year in the, thank you. 1 year when I was a scholar, because I kept doing the work in Uganda while I was doing my studies in the US, MasterCard accepted to start admitting some of our students. And we have had close to 40 students actually from our program going to university. This has contributed so much to our organization because when I completed my degree in 2015, I went back to support my colleagues, and in the last 2 years I was working as executive director. But then when I moved on, even someone who is running as executive director is also a MasterCard scholar who we work together since the beginning, and Takamaze is with me here. And so this is part of my story, really working hard to help other children who need education like me to reach their full potential.
Excellent. What did you study, by the way?
I did biochemistry.
Biochemistry.
Yeah.
And just from a show of hands, who here studied business management like Jean Bosco? Who is doing business management? Just raise your hands.
Right?
Business management. And what about engineers like Patricie? Yeah? Cool. And then biochemical?
Biochemistry.
Biochemistry. Who is doing biochemistry here?
Oh.
Okay, all right. So these are the people that you have to talk to. Thank you so much for those amazing stories. Now let's talk about courage. You know, courage is such a big word. It can be very abstract. We want to take it from that abstract sphere and bring it into a more tangible form. So if I can just share my own brief story with courage and what it means to me. In my work as a journalist, I do a lot of reporting on terrorism. So I'm talking to terrorists. I'm talking to people who've been victimized by terrorists. Sometimes I'm in harm's way. I've been shot more than once by the terrorist group in Nigeria called Boko Haram. And people ask me all the time, Chika, why do you do this work? And I have to say, I guess it's courage. You know, so I want you guys to talk about what courage means to you. And also, let's imagine that courage is a fashion statement. It's an outfit that you put on your body, right? So what would your outfit of courage look like? Whoever wants to tackle that one, just feel free. Don't be shy.
Yeah, that is not an easy question to answer. But like you said, for me, I define courage as like stepping out of your bed, like knowing that what you are going to do is not easy, and many people have actually failed to do it, but you are like, I still have to wake up, step out of my bed and do this. So if it is an outfit for me, that is, what is it? Like, there is no clear definition to that, but for me, it's just actually getting out of that fear
Okay.
and be able to say, okay, this is really big, but I'm also big enough to tackle this. And I guess that's what happened when I decided to start the company that I'm running today. It was not really easy because I was born in a very rural area. We didn't have access to electricity, and let alone this charcoal that many people use. We had to just wake up early in the morning and go in forest to collect firewood. I don't know if some of you have similar stories, but with some of the people that I talked to were born in capital cities of their countries. So that is like where access to electricity is concentrated. But for me, where I was born, there is no electricity at all. So when I started thinking about solving this problem, many people were like, you are trying to solve an issue that you don't even understand. But I still felt the gut to just step out of my fear, do the research, look for partnerships and everything necessary to get started.
So as far as a fashion statement, do you have any idea? For me, it would be like a tall headscarf. In Nigeria, we have these tall headscarves we call gele. So that would be my fashion statement for courage. What would yours look like?
I wanted to be really specific, but I couldn't find like a match because I keep changing. I don't know what I like. So, so like the bottom line for me is like, am I dressed? So, which means, as far as courage is concerned, I always ask I used to ask myself whether I'm dressed enough, of course, to impress. Because I'm single, I have to impress some ladies here. So, I used to say...
Just to throw that out there.
I used to ask myself whether I'm doing something really big, just like how I ask myself whether I'm dressed. I also ask myself whether I'm doing something.
Okay. So Jean Bosco is single and searching. Single and searching. So Joseph, what would your outfit of success or courage look like, and how do you define courage in a more tangible way that we can really understand it?
Okay. Thank you. So courage, if it's like an outfit, I think I would have it in two parts of my body. And I think one of it should be on my feet. It can be the shoes, it can be boots or something like that. Because I think most of the time to live a life of authenticity, I really think like you always have to step outside your comfort zone. We are born in communities where we have so much limitations, but at the same time where we have so many opportunities. And we are born in places where the culture is you have to stay in certain perspectives. And so to go outside your comfort zone, to try something new, it really needs courage, always to feel that your feet wants to move ahead. But at the same time, I do think that you should be able to have it in a way that it can inspire other people. And so I need to have it on my head where it is really visible, not necessarily arrogant. But, we've all watched some movies and you've seen that superstar guy, you feel like I could be the one. Most of them are not real, but you feel like it's a movie, but then it brings something in you. And we have many people we admire as our role models, and that's because their voices, their actions changed the world. They were visible. And so my feet should really be able to move me where people are not seeing or where people don't allow me to go. But when I succeed, it should be able to be visible to the people. Africa has so many young people who are really trapped in our traditions, in many things. And sometimes we can't depend on our parents to be inspired to really make the continent wants to be. And so if my courage is going to inspire other people, let it be here.
Okay.
Thank you.
So you wear courage on your feet and on your head as well. Excellent. Patricie, any response?
Actually, I was going to maybe bring another sphere to what courage for me would look like. I relate courage a lot to integrity, to do the right thing when no one else is looking. And it, for me, actually, I would wear it as underwear, something no one sees. My last line of defense, when everything else has been damaged, I would still keep my courage. And that's the courage to do something right when no one is looking. To actually, it should be deep, because you need courage mostly at the times when you don't feel like waking up. So it has to be deep down in your heart. And so for me, if ever fashion decides for us to wear underwears and they're seen, then I'll be in trouble, because I want to keep my courage hidden somewhere where I'll draw from it when I need it the most.
Wow, that's very profound, very beautiful. So now let's talk about some of the decisions that you guys have made in your lives where you had to step out in courage and you received some backlash. Maybe people didn't understand your decision. Can you guys give us one example of a time you stepped out on a step of courage and people didn't quite understand and you faced some real opposition to that?
Go ahead. I was going to talk about it because it's so... So when I decided to move back to Rwanda, I had just gotten hired at the Transportation Authority in San Francisco. And my family, of course, my then fiancé, were so excited for me. And they thought I was crazy, because here I was going to learn what I was just about to graduate in and so on. But people thought I was crazy to come back here. And I think for me that has always been the stark example for why one day when I had a lot of opposition to my decision.
So
and
come
then
back to Rwanda.
like moving back here, because at the time, of course, I'd been offered the job, but it wasn't clear what I was going to be doing. I had always wanted to work in government since really a long time ago. And so I just said, you know what, I'll come. And people didn't believe me. They thought I had better opportunities there. I could, maybe come after I've acquired some skills, which also made sense at the time. But that's when really my belief in the work I wanted to do became something I had to fight for, because everybody didn't believe it was the right decision.
So when they actually questioned your decision to come back here, what did you say in response, or did you just kind of keep quiet, let them see the results?
I told them, you see, I want to be true to my heart, to myself. I've always said I want to work for this country, and I feel like if I stay for one extra year, I might never come back, because indeed I'll be working in something that I love so much, transportation. So I'd rather go now and do what I've always believed in, and then if it doesn't work, that's fine, but I'll step in and go.
Excellent.
And I guess that was also courage.
I can totally relate. When I told my parents I was moving back to Nigeria in 2012, my mother cried for days. She cried. She said, why would you go back to that crazy country? But here I am, and no regrets.
Yeah.
So I can totally relate to that. I think many people here can also relate to coming back from the West to their home countries. Jean Bosco, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, sure. I remember I received like a strong backlash when I decided to do what I do, because I started when I was a university student, like maybe 2 years before I graduate. I remember most of my classmates were like, Bosco, you see, we are training ourselves to be good accountants, finance managers, but you are wasting time, like pitching your ideas to so many people. But the business environment is very complicated. Your family is broke. No one is ready to support you. So how confident are you that what you're going to do is gonna work? But I was like, I'm really committed, and I want to see this happening. But they kept insisting, and I remember some of the guy said that if I ever borrow money from him, he's not gonna give it to me, because I was like, I'm a very talented student. I'm very sure I'm gonna get a job, and I'm going to make money. But if you borrow some money from me because you refuse to just come out and start applying for jobs, we are not going to give you money. So I was kind of nervous a little bit, because what they were saying, I think, happened like 6 months after graduation. I was really working very hard. but nothing was going. I remember I got like a very big client who got services and products from me that were worth about like $4,000. And that was very big for me because that would be my first time to have such amount of money. But that was on credit. So I had to borrow money so I could be able to deliver the service to him. So he delayed in paying. I'm saying, see, but it's another business, but the business delayed in paying back. So it was very, very difficult. But I remember the first time they did it, I was like, I don't care that this is a company, but because most of the time when I walk into the bank, I see people with, small sack, the envelope that many people use when they go to withdraw money in banks. But most of the time when I walk into the bank, I could see those people like with big envelopes. And in those times, I used to say, one day it will be me. So I was like, okay, I don't care now that this is company money, but I feel like buying an envelope and withdraw everything that this customer just paid, put it in an envelope, and then walk outside the bank just to make sure that everyone has seen that I have money.
A lot of money. That you're the old guy at the top.
Exactly. And and walk toward another bank branch and deposit the money. So I did it. So I was lucky enough because people from that very first bank where I went to withdraw the money saw a rich guy withdrawing money. And on the other bank branch, they saw another rich guy depositing the money. So it was wonderful. So that was like the moment I got like a backlash, but I guess I got a reward, and I'm very happy of the work that I'm doing.
Now let's talk about creativity. Everyone in this room, we have to have creativity to give us new ideas. So let me ask you three, are there any practices or any rituals that you all engage in to help your creative juices flowing? Anything?
So creativity, it's something which is driven by most of the time, which comes from insight. I think creativity most of the time is around things which have never happened. You either create a new process to achieve something, or you create something new, come up with something new. And there is the common understanding that creativity, which is mostly spoken about, I think it's in technology. But what I've seen is that creativity, especially on my side, it's driven by either the passion to push myself or being unsatisfied by the situation around me. Sometimes it's a problem, like we're talking about education, but sometimes it's about the voices which need to be heard, challenging the status quo either in the community, sometimes in the organization, and you help people or you challenge people to have a different perspective. And it's that type, I think, of interruption, that sense of unsatisfaction, which really generates an environment which at the end brings creativity. Some people, we become creative when you're hungry.
Really? I've never experienced that. Do tell more. So when you're hungry, actually you get inspiration?
Oh, you start thinking, what is the future going to look like? And I have 2 children, 3.5-year-old. Sometimes I've seen when he needs, we really do our best for him not to have any sugar stuff. But sometimes if he needs a candy, he's going to find a way to really bring it out in a way that you're going to give him something small. So creativity, I think, it's something which is driven when you're unsatisfied with the situation. And when you see in an environment like we are in, especially in Africa, I think there is huge opportunity for creativity because we have so many problems. And so if we really don't feel satisfied about our situation, if every time we can challenge ourselves, say, something has to be done, we need to try something. I think that's what it generates creativity, and that's how I see it.
And Patricia, what about you? Do you have any practices that you do to help generate creative juices?
I guess for me, I'm really creative at 3 a.m. Whenever I get a chance to wake up in the middle of the night, also as a new mom, I have all my great ideas. And as you also can imagine, I'm always in meetings as a government worker, official. And so I've kind of turned these opportunities into being meetings. So me, and then things about me. So I use those those opportunities to think about new ideas, to write down some of the things I want to do, and in turn, when I'm really rested, not when I'm hungry, like when I'm rested is a time when I become really creative. So I try to relax and think about a problem in a different way, because I'm always trying to solve issues, whether in the office or outside on the field, and then just ask questions, triple questions. What is the problem? So what? And how can I do this differently? So I'm always thinking, and I use the 3 a.m. meetings to think about that and be creative.
So when you wake up at 3 a.m., besides taking care of your child, do you like to go to a quiet space? Do you sit by yourself? Do you listen to music?
I'll just sit by myself and think. And of course, I've been trying to put my phone away when I sleep, but I also write things in my notes so I can remember what was going on at that time. And I started practicing this when I had a child, indeed, because that's when I had to wake up in the middle of the night. So I've used this opportunity to also get more creative about how I solve issues.
For me, creativity is a part of my assignment every day, because most of the time when you are running a company, you have to be creative. Because if you are not creative, that means you might even get out of the business. So part of the work that I'm doing is to always sit down and study around and see new ideas, travel, and bring all that to my environment and see what we can do differently. Of course, it's a challenge when you are not running a company alone, because even when you come up with that great idea, you still need to tell it to your partners and get their approvals. But of course, it's better than not having any idea at all. But for me, the way I practice creativity, the way I come up with ideas is to just travel. That's number one. To read books, so I can combine all the knowledge and look at my situation and see what can we do differently. How can we bash the status quo and see how we can move forward from this. And I guess that's how we do it.
So you like to travel. Do you prefer traveling to rural areas, or do you like the buzz of the city life? Or in between?
It depends because most of the time when you really want to be creative, you have to avoid all the bias. You have to just open your eyes wherever you are, whether you are in a city or whether you are in a rural area, because you never know where an idea might come from. I remember when we had an idea to start the ecotourism business that I talked about was when I was working with a friend in my rural area, like a place where I grew up, but I had never seen the potential of that area until when I decided to just randomly walk with that friend. So we were just walking and we were on top of the mountain. We saw how we had like a 360 view of the village around the beautiful forest, beautiful mountains. We're like, this is a cool place for tourism. So how can we create a tourism product around this? So we finally put together our thoughts and everything, and we finally got the business up and running.
Excellent. Thank you for those tips. I have a few more questions, but I first want to talk to our audience. Do you guys have any questions? Let's just, throw some questions at our panelists here. If we can do 2 questions at a time, can we get the mic going around? Don't be shy. Who has a question for our panelist? You say 2 questions. There's one here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Munyambanza from Gambia. Thank you so much for being here today and giving us these great ideas of yours and your journeys. I have a question about your journeys again. I mean, was there a time when you had to make yourself sit down, cry for some time, and during that process, trying to be creative? Like, was there a time like that? Did you have to do that?
Yeah. Another question?
Was there what?
Okay, can you just repeat it? Jean Bosco is asking for more details.
Was there a time in your journeys when you had to make yourself sit down and cry for some time, and in that process trying to make a way forward, like think of a way forward?
Like you've hit a brick wall and you have to push past it, right? I think that's the question. How about one more question?
Hello.
Okay.
My question is to Patrice. And you're a very young and smart person, and you went to a good university and everything, and I'm sure you had a lot of options, coming back to the country and also maybe working in the States. But you chose to come back to the government, and I'm sure you had a lot of expectations of like what you wanted to achieve in the government. How would you say your expectation of what you thought you would achieve in the government has changed compared to like the actual thing that's happening in the government?
Awesome. Patrice, you want to take that question?
Sure. I think that's a very interesting question. I actually haven't had time. As you can imagine, it's been very fast for me. I haven't had an opportunity to sit down and revise my expectations. But what I would say is that for me, it's been really very fast. When I started 4 years ago in the ministry, I never in my wildest dreams would have imagined that I would make me a permanent secretary. It's one of the positions in government that you find a lot of experienced people who've been in government for so many years and so on. So for me, it went very fast. And I would say that actually I was very surprised to find the government very efficient. My fear making the decision to come back was that it was going to be really routine, a lot of bureaucracies, and very difficult to adapt to, but I was surprised. Many of you might have heard this, but the government of Rwanda is really efficient. There's no we don't have those built-in bureaucracies for no reason. Like at that time, I was working as a technical advisor to the minister. I would call him any time of the day. He would call me any time of the day. I would WhatsApp him for anything I wanted to check in with them. And for me, that was a huge surprise. So it's been an honor to work with the government of Rwanda and also get to impact even more people than I had ever dreamed about. So my expectations have actually been exceeded, I think.
And what about the first question? Was there a time that you guys hit a brick wall and you had to kind of push your way through it? Joseph, you're nodding your head.
Yeah, so in any work, there are always those moments where you really think, am I supposed to really keep pushing? And for me, like Patricia was saying, when returning to, when I was coming back to Uganda from the US, my colleagues, most African students, they really find it even coming back when it's a problem. But I had a chance that, my parents, I feel like I had exceeded their expectation. My parents had been in the refugee camp most of the time. So when they saw me going to secondary school, going to university, they didn't really expect much from me, so they were really contented. So coming back from the US was not a problem. But then when I returned, my goal was to spend 1 year while helping the organization. And then after 1 year, I go back to do my master's. And the board advised that I stay longer for 2 years. And I had not really mentally prepared myself for that because 3 of my colleagues who were working full-time, one was going for his master's in the US, Another was going to run a new project in DRC. Another one was going for something else. So the organization, which had close to around 40 employees full-time, and over 1,000 children were supporting in schools, was now on my head. And we had a continued culture where, like, from June to August, we always had a crisis in the budget. And I'm doing this. I have a wife in the U.S. Well, we had just gotten married, and, we had our plans of going back to school. Everything was planned. So this thing of running the organization full-time was new. And then, there is a time, especially 2017, in the middle of the year, we were supposed to pay employees. And after I signed the checks bounced. And I was seeing the accountant. So everyone, I'm still young, but then some of the employees are really older than me. And it's really hard to call someone, he's a teacher, he has a family they are feeding. It's hard to tell them the nonsense that you don't have money to support them. And, I took my time, thought about it, tried to explain, and I really thought of finding my way around it. The good thing, I've really had many people to rely on for advice, but also even in a crisis, there are people whom we've had, call people and then they are willing to give money on spot. I remember that time I called James Mwangi through the wife, Shami. She has been working with the African Leadership Academy, and James is the CEO of Baobab, but he really cares about the work we do. And he told me, let's have a meeting at some point. So the meeting was now to plan. He had to ask me a lot of questions, what plans do I have for the organization, the budget, other things. And then he told me, for you to really be able to support the organization, you need to have a plan. And the first thing you need to do, you need to have a plan where you're going to raise enough money to run the organization even 6 months ahead so that you can have time to think. Because I talked about not being satisfied helps you to be creative. But when it becomes too much, it leads to what they call panic, what the lady was talking about yesterday. So if it becomes too much, you freeze. You can't do anything. And so his advice was to help me from being in that mood of panicking and the organization gets crisis. And so in those initial stages of, being in a crisis where I can't tell anyone what's happening, having one or two people to tell the board and James, it was very helpful. And from that time, actually going forward the organization, I had enough money. We had a budget of our close to over 400,000, and every year I managed to raise enough money to run the organization.
That's great.
It helped a lot. Yeah.
So basically, when you hit a brick wall, your advice is never to freeze. Just keep going, right?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Not freeze, but also if you have one or two people you can share with, always have the people who believe in you and you really trust them. Open to them. They will help you go through it.
Excellent.
Yep.
How about two more questions from the audience? One here?
We actually have two questions from the Facebook Live. I'm just going to read them out. The first one is from Grace Shinga, and she said, what were your expectations after graduation? Were they too high to accomplish or too low so that you don't get disappointed? Have your expectations been met, and how did you deal with expectations that were never met? Okay. And the second question is from Angela. I'm a recent graduate and would be very much love to hear from the panelists how they handled expectations from family, work, and the community in general.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And then there was one more.
Yeah.
Okay.
My question basically goes to all of them. First and foremost, this question, I'm talking on behalf of students who study abroad. I know it would be hard for most of us to come back home after experiencing that Western world experience. So I want to know, or what would be your advice to these students? How can they get the courage to come back home and inspire their communities and also share with their communities what they learned instead of running away from their communities and do what you call brain drain or take their brains outside. Then the other thing, someone commented about connectivity, and then someone said, how are we going to be able to use our connections to make great impacts? Other than being like connecting, at the end of the day, just being
Excellent. I love that brain drain question. As I already said, when I told my mom I'm coming to Nigeria, she cried. It's like, Mom, I'm going to Nigeria, not to hell, but she just kept crying. So excellent question. Thank you for that. Who wants to tackle those questions? 2 from Facebook and then 2 from the young lady.
Let me talk about the first one on Facebook regarding expectations. For me, I didn't have such moment where I would say, I'm going to do this after graduation, because I had already started when I was in school. So it was like a transition. It was like, now I have like enough time to do
Full
what
time.
I have already started. So, which is something I always tell some of the students, you don't need to wait until you graduate so that you can make a plan for your life. You start planning your life when you are already in school, because that's a good place to build connections. And that again answers to the other question of connections. So for me, I use a school as an opportunity to get, first of all, free internet and connections, free employees, because, most of your classmates can handle some of the work, like writing business proposals, some of those things, and also, having your lecturers or professors to test your products. If you have a prototype, you can show them. They can, connect you to the people outside of the campus that they already know. So for me, I guess I didn't have expectation after graduation. But again, regarding expectations from my parents and communities, like Joseph said, I have already exceeded their expectations. I haven't exceeded my expectation, because most of the time when I look at myself, I feel like I'm thousands of steps away from getting really where I want to be. But of course, I don't mean I'm dissatisfied, but I just feel like I can do more. And I think I'm on the right path. But for them, they're like, we wanted you to just go to school and graduate and get a job, and don't ask us to buy you anything or bother us with questions.
These are your parents, right?
Exactly, my parents, and of course the community as well, because when you are a burden to your parents, that means you are a burden to the community as well. So now they are very happy, because most of the time I can participate in most of the community programs, donate, of course, not that much, but at least I can do something to the community. So they are very proud.
Excellent. Anybody else?
I guess for me, I had really high expectations after Berkeley. It was a tough life there. And I had promised myself that if I survived that life, nothing was going to be too difficult to survive. And also, I remember even discussing with my fiancé that I wasn't going to accept just any kind of job, because I just felt I had learned so much and I was ready to contribute. So I was really ready to fight. I remember even negotiating my salary, which is not something that's common here, but I had to negotiate it and tell them, I have something to offer, you better hire me for what I have. So I feel like my expectations for after graduation had been high, and my, I guess my advice to graduates or people still in school is to value yourself and what you have to offer, because there's just so much. I mean, you know it when you're already on the job, but there's just so much you can do. And then so you have to rank yourself and then, put some class to who you are. As for family, of course, I guess as a young woman and in most of our cultures, the expectation is to get married. So right after my undergrad, people were hoping I would tell them, now I'm ready to get married, but I say to myself, I'm not doing this yet. I still have a lot of things to do. I still want to learn so much, so I don't want to take extra responsibility yet, even though I had been dating my then boyfriend for about 5 years. So that was really high expectation. But, and again, I think it's also, it's also about choosing, because people have all these things already planned out for you, but it's all about what you want for yourself. You can do it if it's what you want it for yourself, but I just said, I'm glad I chose the right one. He was supportive of my plan. I'm just going to go on and then go to Berkeley and then first graduate. So communities have a lot of expectations, especially for women. You know, when you're hitting 20-something and you're about to get to 30, you even feel the pressure. But it's always great to sit down and plan it for yourself. And if theirs matches yours, so be it.
So you said that you negotiated your salary, but many people here don't do that. Why do you think that's the case? And how did you notice that it's kind of unusual to negotiate your salary here?
Again, I guess it's what I said about following what you have to offer.
Right.
I realized that when I was negotiating it, because the person we're negotiating said, you know, this is already good. You see, you're going to be among the most well-paid here, so just take it. And I said, no, still not where I want it to be, because I want to sit here and be stable, so I'd rather get what I think I deserve, but also not, again, because I was coming in with the will to serve as a public servant, I also had to balance that out, so I'm not asking too much, but also saying, yes, I deserve this, I'll have to fight for it. And that's when...
I love that.
Yeah, that's when I realized it's not common, because he was shocked.
Right.
You know, I was 25, 24 at the time, and they were just like, whoa, okay, I'll give it to you. So I think
Ask
it's just
and you shall
asking.
receive, right?
Yeah.
Definitely. Joseph?
So when it comes to expectation, it's really good to know that the world out there will always set expectations. I think one of our friends, she's here. Yesterday she mentioned how sometimes she feels she's doing well, but then like another part of the brain says you're supposed to be doing that anyway. Sometimes when you're doing well, if you have been good in school, sometimes if you've been the first, you realize that the higher you go, like being the first, actually creates more pressure for you, because it feels like you don't have any more to go. The only what is left is for you to fall back. And you really have a lot of pressure to protect it. When you're doing well, the community sets expectations for you. And while it is good, can be good motivation, if you're not really careful, it can actually drag you outside either your dreams or your potential. Because sometimes when you listen too much, if things are going well, there is a chance for you to start showing off, and you become, a can be a celebrity or something like that. But I really think that expectations we always need to set it ourselves, revise it where necessary. And I remember Nelson Mandela said that there is no passion to be found playing small, in living a life that is less, than what you're capable of living. And that's because, we're supposed to always challenge ourselves. But when you have your dreams, your goals, your expectations, it means you also have the ways to evaluate your success. And sometimes even when no one is telling you a good job, you should, touch yourself. You say, I tried, I failed. That's a progress, I will try again. Because sometimes you've seen when things are going wrong, everyone is going to desert you. But if you really have it in yourself and you can encourage yourself, it helps you going. And so whether you go to the US, you go where, I think you should know that, first of all, getting this type of scholarships, we are selected. There are so many young people who we get this scholarship because it means we have something better to offer than them. But that does not mean that the world is going to be fair on us every time.
That's a good point.
And so when they have expectation, if it's necessary, it's connect to your passion, meet the expectation. If not, please focus on what you think is important, because we have much to do than just making people happy.
Excellent.
Yep.
So the second woman asked a very good question about the brain drain. How do you guys respond? Just making that transition from the Western world back here. What are some of the steps that you have to take? Some of the things you should keep in mind as you make that huge move back here?
I guess I could talk about that a bit. I think it's just coming to terms with the facts that that there are many more opportunities this side of the world, and the opportunities indeed match also the challenges. I remember when, and this is a small, minor thing, but I remember discussing with one of my friends before moving back, who said to me, "But you see, you're going to go back to this world where there's no hot water." And I said to myself, yeah, I realize. And the electricity is going to be on and off all the time. I realize it's going to be that. But I would rather be a part of the solution than sit here and enjoy it when my whole family is living through. You have to understand that it's different. You won't be, in the comforts of the West, yes, but there's many more opportunities to become a part of the solutions here than there are in the West. Mm-hmm. So it's very difficult, especially because there's also high expectations as you go through that. I've met friends who move before they even have a job, and it's very difficult to explain to your family that you can't meet some of your basic needs for some months before you get a job. But I think when you're driven by this wanting to become a part of the solution, it's very powerful. You can go through it, and it's fine. I remember even the pressure on my friends to show me the best parts of the town when I came back. I mean, I hadn't been away for so long, but they just felt like I had changed. But I told them, look, I'm more Rwandan than ever. I'm just bringing all these packages that I want to unload here and see how we can all become a part of what's going on.
So when you came back, you did not secure a job yet, is that correct?
So I had actually secured an offer, but I didn't know what job it was going to be. But when I came back, I actually decided to pause for 2 months and then give back first to the community. I organized a camp for girls just to take it in, and before I get into the full government. It was a bit intimidating at the time. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So now I want to ask you all about books.
Can I say something
on that?
Go
ahead, sure.
I didn't know this is very important for students, especially as you finish your second year, going in your third year, you're about to finish. Pressure continues to increase. Most of the time when you're going to college, you go with excitement, but most students, especially international students, they finish when they have a lot of stress because of thinking what's going to happen next. And I can say 90% it will hit you real, like you're going to have a crisis. And I know when we are in school, MasterCard gives us, some money to use, and it's never enough, right? Mm-hmm. But it's really more than most of our parents can give us. And when you graduate, MasterCard, it cuts that one. And it's good to know that for Patricia, she was lucky to have the job offer, but given the fact that most students are going to continue to graduate and the jobs in Africa are very few, there is a high chance you may stay for 3, 4, even 5 months without a job. And for me, what I can tell you is that, never to doubt yourself or to really see your future as a hopeless future. You need to have, sometimes people to talk to. If you can do something like organizing the camp to keep yourself busy. If it's volunteering, even when you're not getting the money, do it. But keep yourself in a way that you are having a positive attitude and a small impact whenever you can. And whenever opportunities come, try to get it. But let's really face it with a understanding that it may be hard, but we should still be able to go through it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. So now I want to ask you guys about books. I'm an avid reader. I'm sure many people here are avid readers as well. Can you all just mention one book that you read that really transformed your paradigm? It really helped you guys to move forward. Just one book, the name and the author of the book.
I think the book that really changed how I see things is a book called True North by Bill George.
Okay.
It talks about I think you understand True North. It's what you consider important in your life, and what are your approaches, how do you go about it. So he was a very successful CEO of a big company in the US, And he talked about his experiences before he was promoted to that executive rank, and then to how he handled some of the contracts he had to negotiate in the company, like so much corruption, like all the tricks that you have to go through when you are such a powerful leader. But again, how your true north guides you towards like taking the right decision. So
Your inner compass.
exactly.
Excellent.
Like, yeah, where does it guide you?
Right. So True North by Bill George.
Yeah,
Has
True
anybody read that book? No?
Nobody?
Okay. Patricie?
Mine is How Will You Measure Your Life by Clay Christensen. And this is actually, it comes highly recommended because even last year, we were in a the youth meeting with the president, and he recommended the book, President Kagame. This book changed my perspective on success when I read it back in the day, because you see there's lots of pressures, but as you, indeed, like you said earlier, as you go up the ladder, there's a lot that goes on, there's a lot of loneliness, so it's rather very important to know that you have to build your own circle, be there for your family, avoid jail, and this book is really interesting. I'd highly recommend it.
How do we avoid jail, Patricia?
It's what I talked about earlier, having the courage to do the right thing when no one is looking.
Right.
Yeah. Currently, in my current job, I sign a lot of contracts, and really huge contracts for a country, and I always remind myself to be true to myself, because everything that I do, all the signatures I make would land me in jail if anything went wrong. But I know for sure that because I'm always right, except for my mistakes as a human being, even if I ended up in jail, I would be fine with a clean heart. So that's about it.
Can you repeat the name of the book and the author so people can write it down?
Sure. How Will You Measure Your Life by Clay Christensen. Christensen.
Okay, thank you. And Joseph?
Okay, so I'm not remembering the author, but the book is Go Giver. It's a simple book. Actually, I've just read it the second time when I was returning. A few hours, you should be able to read it. And this book is about, it's a story whereby a very successful man was giving guidance to a young, passionate entrepreneur who initially had enthusiasm to be rich, but along the way he learned so many lessons which helped him not just to focus on being rich. And this book talked about a number of values, 5 values. And the first one is on value addition. He used an example of the difference between a bad restaurant, a good restaurant, and the best restaurant. And he was saying, like, what differentiates the three? You find that in the bad restaurant, there won't be, you won't get enough food, and you will feel like your money has been wasted. In a good restaurant, you may get enough food worth your money, but nothing else. But what makes the best restaurant, it's the service. The food is good, the environment is good, but the way you are served. And I was saying, like, the best people who serve, they give a service which is more than the money they have been paid, and that's what makes a great restaurant. And along the way, he also says that, we are all meant to serve. Whether you're trying to earn a lot of business, actually the money you get is connected to the number of people you're serving. If you see Facebook founder, Mark Zuckerberg, that last name is always a problem. He's serving a lot of people, and every year he's coming among the best in billionaires. If you see the Amazon guy, Jeff, it's because he has serving many people. And he was saying that the greatest wealth in the world are really created by many people, men and women who have passion to serve, to share, and it's at the same time consumed by people who are greedy, who always want to be served every time.
Excellent.
And I really think that we are here. We've been served by MasterCard, by our parents in some ways, by mentors, and other people are ahead waiting to serve us. And I believe we have the passion to serve. If your passion is to serve by while making money, focus on serving people, increase the number of the people you are going to serve, and believe it or not, you're going to be either a millionaire or whatever you want to do, and you're going to succeed. Yeah.
Can you repeat the name of the book so that people can write it down?
Go Giver. If you allow me, I can check for you here.
Sure.
The author.
Go Giver. And for me, I would say a life-changing book was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Has anyone read that book? Yes, excellent. It was so life-changing. For me, it just taught me how to interact, how to network with people. So How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I read it, I think, 2015, and I still remember almost every single word from that book. So once Joseph remembers the author, we can move forward.
I may not remember. I will read. He's Bob Bug.
Okay. Baobab.
Bob Bug is B-U-R-G.
Okay, B-U-R-G.
Yeah.
Okay, Bob Berg. Okay,
Yep.
excellent.
And also there is another book which I think is important for young people. It's called Boundaries.
Oh, yeah.
Because we really have so many things distracting us, but it helps you to, like, it talks about boundaries from childhood to marriage, in business, in friends, in family. And actually, it can help, especially in minimizing some of the things which are unnecessary, but they cause us stress.
Okay. So just one more question before I toss it back to the audience. Let's talk about self-care. You know, we're living in a world where we're bombarded with information. People are always trying to get our attention. You guys are doing great things. You're a VIP as far as I'm concerned. So how do you take time away from your daily life to just kind of refresh, to rejuvenate? Joseph, you and I were talking about this yesterday, and you were saying sometimes in African culture, because we live in such communal societies, people may see the need to move away as selfish. So how do you address that need to say, you know what, sister, brother, husband, and wife, let me just move back a little bit? So what do you guys do to practice self-care?
I think we are not yet there. I can be honest, I've struggled with this. At work, even at school, because I did my degree when I'm also doing full-time work to work on scholarships and to help to support my colleagues in Uganda. And I can say many times I think I was worn out. Good enough when we are still young, we can really use a lot of energy and still manage to continue. But as I grew up, especially when I started, when I had a family and kids, I think it hit me in a way that I was getting confused, whereby, even if, your partner will support and believe what you're doing, there are times you need to be there when you're needed. And my wife was in the US, I was in Uganda. And there's a time I was in the US, we're expecting a baby. So we went to see a doctor to check the schedule of when the baby is going to arrive, so that I can be able to come to Uganda and then have them to go back for the baby to come. And when I was in Uganda, the baby arrived 2 weeks earlier.
Wow.
It was... So the plan was I was supposed to first go to a meeting, TED conference in Arusha, and the ticket was there. My plan to go from there to the US was there. When I got the news, I got confused. It was hard, and I realized, I think it's a negligence, and I felt that we need to be careful. To be able to serve other people, you really need to have a mentor. Your mind has to be strong. And there are things you're able to resist, there are other things you're not able to resist. And having a discipline on knowing that this one is going to interrupt my mind is important. And learning how to say no, to put things on hold, knowing that, I was sharing with you, sometimes we breathe in, and sometimes we think we are like Jesus, where we can give and give and give without receiving. But like I said in the book, The Go-Giver, it also talked about this. And then this mentor asked the mentee, because the mentee also had this mindset of selfishness, that if you don't give, if you have a lot, you should always give. And then he said, I'm going to count for 30, put a lot of oxygen in your lungs, and I'll count 30 when you're only breathing out. And then the gentleman had to breathe in, and then the mentor started counting. By the time he reached 9, the guy was losing his breath. And it's because, we are people. Sometimes it's receiving love, receiving appreciation, receiving gifts or greetings. And we should really be able to do that. And sometimes receiving means give yourself a break, give yourself time to go and speak to your friends. And it helps you to get energy, because we can only give what we have.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Patrice, self-care?
I think for me it's become even more important after I became a mom, because you see it hit me when I became one that there's just so much demand, and this constant demand from your child, and you just have to get to a point. So I've gotten to a point where I also decided, or I realized I'm more than just a mom. So you see there's this definition of you are this, you are that. So I've said, I'm all these things, and I need to be able to live through all of them. And so for me, there's always a sign. For instance, if I come from work, I've had a very long day, and having, of course, been able to deliver as a mom, but I'm drained, I'll just shut down and say, I'm just going to sleep. And it comes with just understanding that you can't always be at your 100%. You indeed, like he previously said, Joseph, you give what you have. So if you feel like it's all gone, just allow yourself to rejuvenate, to recharge, and then come back to life and then give again. The other thing that there's always, for me, signs. You're just listening to your body, and then when it tells you, slow down, do it. And also creating some me time, the meetings I talked about. So as I went up the ladder, I guess I'm still going, but after I became PS, I just realized it's just intense, and I was going to lose friends, right? Because I'm always busy at work and so on. So I decided to create a forum where I meet my friends, and we started what we call a luncheon club every month, just to meet and then share lunch and then talk about life. And in that moment, for me, I kind of pause and forget that I'm a public servant. I'm also a person, so I deserve to check in with friends and so on. So it's about creating those moments to become a person, because more than anything, before anything, you're a human being. All these titles can be overwhelming, but reminding myself every day that I'm a human being, and I need to eat, I need to sleep, I need, like, those basic things, I fight to get them.
Right. That's good. Jean Bosco?
Yeah, it's even difficult when you are an entrepreneur, because anything that can, accelerate the growth of your company is, you don't know when it's gonna come. It could be a potential investor who is probably arriving in Kigali, and he's requesting that you should meet, and that's the only time he has. And by the time he calls you, you are in the middle of having a meeting with your employees, or you are designing something which is very important, and you are about to finish and wanting to take a rest, but again, this guy is here waiting for you to meet. So by the time he says that, you forget about the meeting, and you have to get your computer ready, you look at your presentations and everything, and then you travel to meet that potential investor. Unfortunately, sometimes, although 10 potential investors you might meet, maybe one of them could be your investor. So sometimes you feel like you are wasting your time, but in reality, that's how it works. So you should be prepared to just keep working very hard, which sometimes defies the other, saying that entrepreneurs are their own bosses. but they have their own bosses in terms of working really, really hard. But of course, it pays off. But when it comes to self-care, it's really, really difficult. But like my colleagues were saying, it's just like accepting your fate or accepting that your body needs to just rest.
Right.
Sometimes you feel like I have to shut it down and take a rest. Not necessarily like going to bed and sleep, but it just comes down to what makes you feel relaxed. So for my case, when I'm feeling really, really tired and wanna like forget about all these crazy things that I'm doing, I feel like going to see my family, like put all the family together, tell them what I've been up to, tell them my journey, have dinner together, play some games. And apart from that, I also travel a lot.
By
And
yourself
again,
or with other people?
Mostly with other people, it's very expensive, but when it's possible.
So solo travel.
Yeah, when it's possible, I do it.
Okay.
But most of the time, I travel where I can meet people who are already where I want to be.
Okay.
That's
So
cheaper.
I could just cover my own expenses.
Right.
And most of the time, those friends can also host you. But apart from that, because I'm not a morning person, when I want to practice self-care, I'm like, today it's a self-care day, so there's no need to wake up at 8 a.m. So today I'm going to wake up at 11:30 a.m.
Okay.
Let me know when the lunch is ready.
Which is
So
very
that's
late
how
for us Africans. Okay, so we have 10 more minutes. Let me toss it back to the audience. Does anyone have any more questions? I see one here, and then one here, and then one here. Okay. So let's start with the lady here.
The microphone is right there.
Okay, this gentleman.
Thank you very much. My name is Patrick. I'm from Rwanda. Thank you for giving us your story and giving us advice on a lot of things. And regarding things of like finding employment after work, after school, for people who like study abroad, it's challenging to find work back at home when you've not been at home for a while. And one of the things that is involved when you find work, it's networking. And when you are abroad, you get a chance to meet people, potential employers, and talk to them and show your skills. And at the end, when you are successful, sometimes you find many job offers, but no job offer back at home because you didn't get a chance to meet people back at home, and you're not very well connected since you've been abroad for a while. And I just wanted to ask, what would be your advice for people in such position? Because they would want to come back, and I know that there's always this concept of making a sacrifice, and we all want to do that, and there's also the risk involved that we always have to take. But what would be your advice to approaching the concept of networking back at home to be able to show your skill and move away from those tempting offers for staying in other countries and working for them? Thank you.
Good question. And then here in the front, is it more Facebook questions?
So this Facebook question is from Arshanti Rashali Armani. Sorry if I read your name wrong. So this is for Patricie. One thing I know is that the world, especially in Africa, has not yet moved out of the belief in the power of patriarchy. You did civil engineering, which is in Africa, and Africa is dominated by men. Do you face more challenges because of this fact? If yes, how did you manage to navigate through?
Excellent. So let's take these two, then we'll go back to the audience. So the first man's question, did anyone have any ideas, any words of advice?
I don't think, because I didn't study abroad,
Okay, sure,
I let
sure.
my colleagues do it. I don't know how I can handle it.
Thank you for your honesty.
I was going to say that the same efforts one puts in networking abroad have to also be put in networking at home. And there's many ways to do that. So when I was in the US, I got in touch with our embassy in the US, and I emailed a lot of people in the US telling them this is what I'm up to, this is what I want to be doing in life, and if there's anything that ever comes your way, please let me know. So I think if your real desire is to move back here, or home, where home is for you, you have to really be intentional about networking with those people and keeping in touch with what's going on at home. I also made it a point to come back home every break I got, so that I could see people, they could see me and remember that I exist even though I'm away. And I think it pays off in the end. Honestly, I think when you really have a desire and you've communicated it clearly to people, there's always a way around how you get in. For the challenges of being a civil engineer and as an engineer also working in a or male-dominated field, indeed there are many challenges, but I also think it boils down to how you want to be perceived. I mean, there's many days, or actually every day, I've talked to people in the room, especially because I get a chance to meet managers and big companies here, and I'm the only woman at a table. Many times maybe I'm the one chairing the meetings, and I always remind them that we need to bring more women here, because it just changes the whole thing. And whenever I have a different idea and I tell them, look, we just talked about color, maybe it's because I'm a woman, so you can benefit from bringing other women on board. For me, I haven't looked at it as more of a challenge. I look at it as an opportunity to be there, so that I can remind them that there are other able women who should be at the table.
But when you say this, how do the men respond? Do they just say yes?
They laugh. They'll be like, we didn't realize it's only us here.
Yeah.
And so one day I even delayed coming, and I was the one who was going to chair this meeting. So I asked them, what did you do? And they said, we didn't even talk to each other. I told them, if you had women, you'd be more civil meeting. Because, men are just business. That's okay. Women are also kind of results-oriented. But when women come on board, it's more balanced. You just get a better results. Right. So I remind them, and hopefully we can more.
So Joseph, do you have any words of advice on how you can network with people back home when you're abroad?
So when I was in school, I was not looking for opportunities to look for a job. I always came back. So one of the things, I think, whenever you have the chance to come back for like a holiday, it's good. And when you are networking, don't network to get a job. Network to find friends, network to find mentors, network to meet people who will understand you and support you. Because what do we actually define as a network? Network is not that, I have 5,000 friends on Facebook. When I post, they like what I am putting. Network is they say that it's an armor of ambassadors, people who believe in you, people who trust you, people who are willing to invest in you. And sometimes they may not be the people who can employ you, but these are the people who can help you and support you to reach your goals. People who you are going to tell, like I said, when you're really down, these are the people you can trust that you can tell. We post things on Facebook which are cool things. There are things we don't put them on Facebook. And because that's not really our authentic network. And so when when you're in college, even you're starting the first year, some programs around in the communities. Some of them are new to you, but remember you have 3-4 years ahead. Try to learn, who do I reach, who can help me to connect with someone who runs that program. And whenever you have opportunity, come and volunteer, come and visit. But even that may not work out. And another thing which I think, coming to Africa or back home without anything to do, sometimes can be confusing. So if you can get OPT for a year, you use it, say, I'm going to spend a year learning and preparing myself, and I go back, or during that OPT, I'm going to reach out to people and tell them about the experience I'm getting. Get that OPT, use it, and come.
What is OPT?
OPT
Optional
is
training.
optional training.
Like an internship, or is it
So
different?
OPT, it's like in the US, you have to apply for the government to allow you to work for 1 year when you're getting experience. When you're a science student, they can do for 2 years. And it gives you, the background, because what I've seen is that most of us in this part of the world, we wait to work when we finish college. But in these first world countries, people get experience even after high school. And when you come back, they're saying, how many years of experience do you have? You don't have it. But then when you have 1 year there and then you apply, it adds something. So like trying many things and making sure, if your goal is to come back, if you really understand how important you're going to be when you put your energy and the skills here, I think you should always aim at coming back, but come back with an agenda.
Right. Excellent. Did that answer your question? Excellent. Sure. All right, we only have time for 2 more questions. So she put her hand up very fast, so let me take her.
Hi, everybody. My name is Patricia from South Africa, University of Cape Town. I was reading here a little bit about Jean. I'm very passionate about innovators, especially in the sector of social enterprise. So I have a quote here that they quoted you, I think, when you were being interviewed, I think it was about in 2017. You say, I'm going to quote you now, the most challenging issue I faced was outstriving the issue of age to earn trust. A lot of policies out there don't favor young people. We are accused of having no experience and no money to run businesses of our dreams. So, the issue of trust is what really, really touches me a lot in terms of innovation, because I'm striving to be, to protect my idea, but it has not been easy for me. So now it's about you concerned about the investors and people that you have to pitch to. You're concerned about them, how they're going to trust you as a new inventor. But then also, I'm also concerned about, can I trust them? So it's that thing of trust that goes both ways. So my question to you is, how did you deal with that? Did you just pitch your first initial idea? I mean, we all start somewhere. Did you just pitch it? Did you try to protect it? Or, and then how did you also get and trust? How were your first investors? How did that go all about in terms of trust?
Is it trust from people stealing your idea?
Well, yeah, that is now your one way. But then also, how do you then gain trust for people to invest?
Okay.
So it's 2 ways.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And one more question? Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Jean Bosco Nzeyimana from Earth University. My question is for Bosco and Joseph. I want to know, because behind you is a team that is working with you. How do you choose these people that you work with, knowing that you have the same goal and trying to go through the same line? And if you have to leave someone, drop someone from the team, how do you do it?
Wow, that's good. Yeah, those are the questions.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I forgot your name, but I surely did say that because that's like the biggest challenge I faced when I was getting started. Because I remember like there was a time when I emailed a mayor. It was like, my name is Bosco, I do this, blah, 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 blah. Can we meet so I can tell you more about what we do, so how we can partner, something like that. And most of the time, when these people like see an email, they first of all look at the email signature. They are like, okay, maybe this is something cool. So when we met, he didn't realize he was actually meeting the person who emailed him. So he thought I was like an assistant to Bosco, and he was still waiting for the real
Jean Bosco to show up.
For the real person to show up,
Yeah.
because he didn't trust this is someone they could be negotiating. like a deal that I was describing in an email. But so you can imagine the time it took me to explain to him what I'm doing, how far we can go. We can go if we decide to partner. So as you understand, when you are a young person and you are doing something, you have to fight not just for your idea, but you need to also understand that your responsibility is also to impress people. Irrespective of how great your idea is, you also have to impress people you are meeting. You have to tell them that you are the right person to do the job. And that is not an easy task. But most of the time when I tell young people, because, this experience that I had, is most of the time, although the idea might speak for itself, but you also have to be creative in so many ways in terms of like how do you show up, how do you talk to the people, how prepared are you, what kind of materials you have, what kind of mentors do you have, like, for example, if it's a big connection that you want to, those potential investors, can you talk to your mentor or your advisor so they can make the first introduction? In order to lower the expectations of those people that you are meeting, because most of the time it's very, necessary. So you have to play around this issue because it will always exist. Unlike in the West, where people expect most of innovations from young people, in many countries in Africa, like the biggest question you face, the challenge you face is like, old people telling you that they were unable to tackle the challenge that you are trying to tackle. And they're like, what are you bringing on the table? Why do you think you are the right person to do this? So you will always face those kind of questions. And speaking about protecting your invention, as you have to gain their trust, they have to gain your trust as well. But when it comes to invention, this is a very serious thing. When you are an entrepreneur, just like you might have a minimum viable product, you always also have to have minimum viable words to say. You don't have to say the whole thing. And investors don't expect you to go through the formulas. This is how we did it.
Right.
This is the first step. This is the second. All those sort of stuff. Because most of the time that's science. They are likely not to understand what you'll be talking about. So it's always trying to see what is the focus, what should I focus on, what are the key selling points, and most of the time in business, the key selling point of a business is not really the invention itself, it's mostly the business strategy, how you are going to do this, how you are going to deliver the product to the market. So you can always focus on some of those areas. And once you gain their trust, you will be ready to go. But it's not going to be easy, which is why I'm saying that you can probably pass through advisors who are mostly older than you and who are already established in business so that they can make those first connections on your behalf. So I guess that's the way I did it, and I'm sure it works. Hope I answered your question. The second one about how do you pick your team and how do you let people go when it comes time to do that? Yeah, it's very difficult. I remember the first time I set my team, all of them were older than me. I started my company when I was 19 years old. So everyone was older than me. Sometimes I was nervous, to talk to my teammates. I'll be like, okay, just like I trust myself to do the right thing, I'm expecting these people to do the same.
Right.
But most of the time, they're not like that. Some of them don't care. They just care about coming to work at 8 a.m. and then leave at 6 sharp or 5 p.m. sharp. And when you have something to do and you want them to stay for a little longer, they have they're like, kid, you don't know. They don't say kid, but they say, you don't know, we have families, we have the children, something like that. We have to go, something like. So you always have these challenges, but as you are an entrepreneur or as you are a leader, you have to influence them. You have to create a culture where everyone feels accountable to the work they're doing, and you don't also have to be afraid of taking a decision, especially when it comes to letting someone go. Because in the end, they are not bigger than the company or the problem you are trying to tackle. So most of the time, the best decision is to just tell them it's time for you to go.
Have you ever had to do that yourself?
Oh yeah, many times, and part of the reason why, part of the reason why I'm here for an extended period of time is because we have something coming up on Monday.
Okay.
But don't tell anyone because, or maybe they're listening on Facebook. But we have to, we have to take these decisions many times, like over and over again. So it always happens.
Do they beg you to come back, or they're like, okay, bye, see you later?
Some of them do it arrogantly, and some of them are not afraid of telling you, yeah, I was actually planning to go.
To leave.
Planning to leave. So it's good that you're thinking of letting me go, and maybe you have a backup plan. Yeah, they say that. They do say that, and some of them beg, and some of them say, if you can just let me stick around for 2 months, I can do things differently. And depending on the situation, you can be apologizing and say, okay, let's do it.
Okay.
Yeah, it will depend on the circumstance, but it will always happen.
Great. So guys, there's a huge TV screen in front of me that says time's up, so I can't continue any further. But if you want to talk to these guys, just feel free and come up to them, all right? So let's just give them a round of applause. And now I want to toss it back to our MCs, Rosine and Norman, if they're around, and they'll just tell us what's next on the agenda. Are they not in the room?
Yeah, they're there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, hey everyone. Hello.
Hi.
Hello. I think we are going to appreciate them in a different way, right? So we're going for